Hi, Dan.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Got my crutches.
Yeah, you feeling okay?
I feel all right.
Yeah.
Tuesday and Wednesday were long days.
Oh
Uh,
God.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I didn't know that you had had surgery. So, oh my God, I can't imagine,
yeah,
having
I
to teach after that.
yeah, I don't know. I was a little crazy about the way I did it, but I did it. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those
And
things.
I feel like I'm Dan Stoller. I'm hosting this event. We're just chit chatting right now, and I'm probably gonna continue to wait for a couple more minutes and let people hopefully trickle in. Um, and then we'll get started. I always assume that people are a couple minutes late because I'm a couple minutes late to everything.
I'm like
Uh,
10 minutes late to everything, generally. So I understand.
Happy birthday, Zhanna.
Thank you.
Also, I don't know what kind of camera you have, but it's fabulous.
I have a fancy camera. My husband's a musician, and and I also have a fancy mic that I just don't feel like setting up. They have this like very popular podcast for their
cool.
like a music podcast, so they have this fancy camera here.
I like that.
I'm just
Awesome.
using it.
Yeah.
It's way better than the computer one, except I sometimes can't figure it out.
I did hear from a couple of people who wanted to be here but could not, so I'm glad we're recording.
yeah, same. I have a couple of students who said the same.
It is a Friday night and also my birthday, so people probably have plans. Or at least other Zoom plans.
Well, I think people are starting to have regular plans again.
Yeah.
Kind of amazing.
I have a lot of outdoor plans this weekend.
Yeah.
Well, seems like it. It's also getting warm out.
I know.
Finally.
I like that we can hear you mixing your drinks.
I just brought it with me because the last couple events I ran out immediately and I couldn't go get a refill because then you have to leave. So I just like brought my soda and my apple brandy in here. How are things at DePaul?
Good. You know, I mean, they've been crazy every place this year, right? I think that, DePaul has been very conservative in dealing with the pandemic, which has been, I think, the right thing to do. I don't know. Barry and Becky might have different views, but yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like workshops really skipped a beat much going online.
Yeah.
They felt fine. I mean, I miss being in the room with people, but we did the same things, So it felt, my classes felt pretty fine. I'm over it. I'm ready to be back in the room with people, but
everyone is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's tiring teaching on Zoom, but I don't mind not having a commute.
Yeah.
You're gonna be so sick of my book by the time this month is over.
Not at all.
We already talked about my book for like an hour and a half or something.
Sorry, I was late. I could not get Eventbrite to let me in. Thank you to Mark who let me in.
Oh, sorry.
So I don't know if others are having a similar problem.
Oh, maybe.
I did have a little problem with it.
We're in the stalling stage right now. We'll start in a minute anyway.
Oh, my dog is so annoying. Not conducive to virtual events.
Good to see you, Jessica.
Good to see you too.
Congratulations on your forthcoming book.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been an interesting year. It's Zoom book events, I feel like, are going to be my new favorite thing.
You like them?
I mean, I like attending them a lot. So I feel like I'll see if I like doing them, but there's a part of me that's just like, I love like having access to sort of everyone's book events in regions that I wouldn't be able to attend in person. So I'm really digging it.
Yeah.
My dog messed up my camera. Now I have to read Okay. Sorry.
All right, well, maybe we should get started. Should we wait another minute? Okay, thanks, Mark, for that. Mark, can you also post in the chat the links to buy the book? If not, I can figure out how to do that too.
Hopefully my book will be back in stock at some point for those links to work.
Well, they can still buy it, right?
Yeah, I just don't know when they'll get it.
Right. Which is a drag.
Yeah.
Happening to a lot of people right now.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. I don't get it. Like I just keep getting all these updates that it's going to be shipped and it's going to be shipped and that maybe it was shipped and then it just never arrives.
Yeah.
It's been like a month. It's very strange.
Well, welcome people. My name is Dan Stoller and I'm a professor in the English department, and it's my pleasure to host this event with Jessica Chiarella and Zhanna Slor. It's kind of a, I think everybody who teaches workshop imagines and hopes for and dreams about the day they get to introduce their students and their books. And I get to do it twice in the same time. So that's pretty cool. I had both of these great writers in workshop not terribly long ago. And
I have a while ago, actually.
Like I said, not terribly long ago.
Not that long ago.
And it's it's a thrill to be able to introduce them and their books tonight. Zhanna Slor was born in the former Soviet Union and moved to the Midwest in the early 1990s. She's been published in many literary magazines, including Ninth Letter, Another Chicago Magazine, and Michigan Quarterly Review. And she is a frequent contributor to The Forward. She and her husband, saxophonist for jazz rock fusion band Marvin, recently relocated to Milwaukee, where they live with their young daughter, Alma, who we may get to see an appearance by.
They left, so.
Oh, they left, so no Alma appearances.
No, hopefully.
About at the end of the world, turn left. Publishers Weekly wrote, Slor keeps the suspense high in this unconventional detective story, using her characters' musings on language and perception to enrich readers' understanding of how and why events unfold as they do. Those looking for an intricately textured tale of family relationships will be rewarded. Jessica Chiarella is the author of And Again, which was the August 2016 Target Book Club pick. She holds an MA in Writing and Publishing from DePaul University and an MFA in Creative Writing from the University of California, Riverside. Her second novel, The Lost Girls, is forthcoming from Putnam on July 6, 2021. And about that, Public Library Journal, which gave it a star review, wrote, readers who enjoy true crime, especially podcasts as well as thrillers featuring unreliable narrators, will appreciate Chiarella's haunting story of lost girls, lost women, and revenge. We have the additional bonus that today is Zhanna's birthday. So I think we'll let the birthday girl read first.
Oh, really? I was going to say Jessica should read first because I'm sick of my book. I want to hear her book.
Well, we can let the birthday girl choose. It can be birthday girl's choice if you want.
I think she should go first.
All right, Jessica.
All right. Happy to take the first reading slot for the birthday girl. All right, I'm just starting at the beginning. So this is chapter 1. The world is full of lost girls, scores of them. Girls who disappear into the night, who inject heroin and fall off the map, who love other girls and come home to find their parents have changed the locks. Girls who run away, girls who are taken. Girls full of sin, who like boys more than they love Jesus. Girls who are locked in basements and held until they give birth to more girls. The weight of them could drag a fleet of ships to the ocean floor. I know all about them. I've made it my business to know. The recording plays over the sound system of the crowded theater in Midtown Manhattan. The house lights are momentarily down, and on stage, a logo of a retro radio mic lit up in purple neon light hangs above the proceedings, the crucifix in this particular church. People look for some of them. Sometimes there are police investigations, sometimes candlelight vigils, volunteer phone banks, pleading parents on local news. No one bothers to look for others. If they were rotten or ruined or from the wrong place or from the wrong sort of family, they're allowed to slip away. For others still, no one even knows that they're gone because no one cared for them to begin with. My sister was lucky in this way, at least. She was loved. We looked for her. I don't think I will ever stop looking. I'm standing at the bar to the left of the audience when a man sidles up to me. I can feel it without having to look, like a little static pulse at the hairs on my arm, the kind of sixth sense you develop when you've had a life like mine. It's my talent, the one my friends would tease me about in college, saying I was a little psychic beneath it all. I'm not, of course. I just pay attention. By my count, my sister was the 16th girl lost in the 100-year history of Sutcliffe Heights, Illinois. One of two kidnappings, though the other was a 6-year-old taken across the Wisconsin border by her father during a custody dispute in 1973. That girl was returned unharmed 2 days later, as soon as the police put out an APB. Most of the others were runaways, factory girls who worked in Chicago's nearby industrial yards in the early 40s, bright teenagers sucked westward by the promise of California in the 60s, nothing like Maggie. He orders a drink, a SoCo and Coke, and it clings to the ice in his glass with the stickiness of syrup. I know who he'll be without having to look at him. If he ordered an IPA, he'd be one of the young producers with a tweed blazer and an encyclopedic knowledge of audio equipment. Whiskey, and he'd be talent, an investigative journalist with a voice for radio, a bit better at talking than he is at writing. But Southern Comfort and Coke, he's an investor, the sort of guy who puts up the funds for a production company because he read that podcasts are becoming increasingly lucrative, and he doesn't have the head to navigate the tech industry. Maggie was lost on October 16th, 1998. She got into a car with a man. Perhaps she knew him. Perhaps he simply spotted her walking home that day. These are the things that we don't know. Even the car was a mystery, a sedan that might have been blue or gray or silver. It was twilight and difficult to tell, especially for an 8-year-old, especially a scared one. I took off as soon as Maggie let go of my hand. She stayed where she was and I ran for home. I ran because she told me to. It was the last thing my sister ever told me to do. Applause begins as the radio fades and on stage the words Jane Doe, nominee, Best Debut Series appear on the screen. Above it, gold lettering reads APA Annual Awards Gala in thin looping script. It would all be elegant if the floors by the bar weren't still tacky from the rock concert held here at the venue last night. That one's going to win, the man beside me says, sipping from the little cocktail straw floating in his drink. He's wearing a blazer with a V-neck t-shirt under it. His hair, cut in a high fade, slick with expensive pomade, shines a bit too much in the light from the stage. The soft pudge at his waist rests on the buckle of his belt. I guess the gym can't quite keep up with all those sugary drinks. What makes you so sure? I ask as he slides his forearm along the bar so it's almost brushing my elbow. It seems he has no intention of getting back to his seat anytime soon. It's the fucking dress that's the problem. Andrea's dress. The one she convinced me to wear, insisting that someone should still enjoy her pre-pregnancy clothes. The dress I took without even considering that I'm already 3 inches taller than my co-creator in flats, and I'm not wearing flats tonight. It's short in a way that implies intention, like I'm in a 90s legal drama trying to make a point about fashion and empowerment. I resolve to try to stand as much as possible through this interminable event, which leaves me hovering by the bar, ordering refills at a pace that's ambitious even for me, and apparently looking as if I've been waiting all night for the attentions of a man whose chest hair is poking through his organic cotton t-shirt. Everyone loves a dead girl, the man says. People eat that shit up. Missing girl, I reply, and the man gives a surprisingly high-pitched giggle, licking some errant SoCo from between the webbing between his thumb and forefinger. She's totally dead. There's no way she's not dead. He takes a long pull on his drink. And it sucks because the show my company produces is so much better. Oh yeah, which show is that? I ask, my voice flat as I sip my dirty martini. Here I am, a girl in a short dress with cropped hair, playing her part as much as anyone else, wearer of smudged eye makeup, drinker of astringent drinks, cool and sly as a Warhol superstar. The Chuck Hoffman show, he replies. I've heard of it. Chuck Hoffman tries to be Ben Shapiro, but falls more into the Alex Jones tier. This is the award for best debut, I reply, and I'm pretty sure your show is in a different category. Whatever, the guy says, it's still better. No dead girls. Maybe you guys just aren't trying hard enough, I reply, and the guy bursts into another round of tipsy giggles. That's cute, he says, as if it's a delightful surprise, my wit. He takes his forefinger and traces it almost experimentally down my arm. You're funny. I indulge momentarily in the fantasy of smashing my glass into the bridge of his nose. I wonder what would break more easily, the stem of his martini glass or the soft tissue of his face. It would be bad timing, though. On stage, a woman in a sequin dress approaches the podium. Words materialize on the dark screen above her as she reads off the names into the microphone. Best debut series. Theater of the Absurd, Champions Unscripted, Tell Me Lies, Jane Doe. What's your name? The guy asks. Marty, I reply, because I can't use my go-to alias here, and there's nothing else to go with but the truth. A ripple of applause breaks out in the theater. See, what did I tell you? The guy says. What? I ask, and he motions to the stage. On its screen, Jane Doe, winner, best debut series, is written in that same gold script. So what do I get for being right? He seems awfully proud of himself. I fish the olives out of my martini glass and down the rest of it, fast and hot in the back of my throat. Just for fun, I drop my skewer of olives, still dripping with brine, into his drink and give it a little stir. The fuck? He says, his lips curling. Congratulations, I reply as I head to the stage to collect my award. The truth is, despite what I told Mr. Soko and Coke, all of this actually did start with a dead girl. Jane Doe, number 4568, who arrived at the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office on April 17, 2018. Jane had been left on the street outside of Illinois Masonic Medical Center during an early season thunderstorm, her veins full of heroin and monoethylene glycol, more commonly known as antifreeze, according to the medical examiner's report. She was between the ages of 30 and 35 years old. She'd had her tonsils removed, and she was slightly anemic, a condition that was likely a result of the fact that she'd recently given birth. And she had a large tattoo of a lizard on her right thigh, and her hair was blonde. My friend Andrea and I were out to lunch when I got the call. If Detective Richards had still been with the CPD, he probably would have reached out himself. But he was already in his 40s when my sister went missing and had retired from the force in 2017. The detective who'd replaced him, some kid who had just been promoted from an undercover gig in Vice, apparently didn't see fit to pick up the phone when the body turned up, even out of courtesy. Luckily, I'd bought the receptionist at the medical examiner's office breakfast every 6 months for the past decade. So when the file came across her desk, she remembered Maggie well enough to reach out. It was plenty, after all. The age, the hair, the tonsils. The receptionist didn't even know that Maggie's favorite stuffed animal was a blue iguana our father had bought her at the Lincoln Park Zoo when she was 7. The other details were enough already to raise the possibility that Jane Doe could have been Maggie. It was Andrea's idea to record what happened. She and I had worked together before, when she'd interviewed me for an episode of a true crime podcast she'd produced a few years ago. And we'd been friends since college, where she'd studied journalism and I dabbled first in criminology, then sociology, then finally landed on English literature. We were sitting at a French bistro in Lakeview when my phone chimed, because Andrea claimed that all she could keep down during her first trimester were croissants with a lot of unsalted butter. So she must have sensed it was about Maggie when I got up from the table to answer the call, must have seen it in my posture as I hovered near the bistro's sunny entrance, leaning against the whitewashed brick. Maybe I looked stricken. Maybe I pressed my hand to the door, unsteady. Maybe it left a crescent of white fingerprints on the glass. I can't remember anything from that moment. Still, Andrea must have known because she already had her recorder running, set on the table between us when I returned. What's going on? She asked, and then held up a silver-ringed hand to stop me from answering right away, ever the journalist. I'm taping this, just so you know. Yeah, I replied, feeling the blood begin to drop from my head, the prick of nerve pain in my fingers, as if I'd slept wrong and just awoken. So I guess there's a Jane Doe at the morgue. I picked up my fork and speared a couple of overdressed leaves of lettuce before I realized that there was no way that I could bring them to my mouth, chew, or swallow. Andrea's dark lipstick disappeared as her mouth tightened. They think it's Maggie? She finally asked. Straight to the heart of it, in a way that reminded me of the affinity between us. She knew that I would bristle at being coddled, that I was never more vicious than when I felt pitiable. I listed off Jane's vitals. Andrea was familiar enough with Maggie's case to understand, to draw her own conclusions. So this is the first new development her case has had in what? Andrea asked. About 8 years, I replied, thinking back to the last sighting, the last girl who might have been Maggie. It used to happen more often when her disappearance was fresh. But after 20 years, nobody else was looking for her anymore. Nobody even knew what to look for. She's got a tattoo on her thigh, a blue lizard, according to the coroner's assistant. I remember how Andrea's hands flew to her face, pinkies meeting against her lips, the rest of her fingers splayed across her cheeks, peering at me over her fingertips, lines appearing in her forehead. I knew what she was thinking, that I also had a tattoo of a blue iguana, a tribute to my missing sister's favorite toy, across the ribs of my right side. Surely this world could not manufacture such a stunning coincidence, that it had to be for her, finally, my sister. Well, that's much.
I missed a little bit of that. I hope
Oh, no problem.
My dog like ran out.
You guys can see I've taught a million classes and never had any technical issues. And tonight I am having some technical issues. So I'm sorry that I've gotten kicked off a couple times.
It's very chaotic over here.
Yeah, that was great, Jessica.
Thank
you very much for reading it.
I liked what I heard.
I can't wait to hear can't wait to see what happens. And that's the beginning, right? That's the first chapter.
That is, yeah, that's the first chapter. That's the beginning of it, yeah.
I have some questions, and obviously I should have looked this up. When does your book come out?
July 6th.
Cool.
Yeah, so you can pre-order it now anywhere books are sold.
Hopefully your books will actually come on the day that they're
knock on wood. I've been hearing about everyone's issues, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
All right, Zhanna, there's no more putting it off now.
Oh, I'm not putting it off. I wanted to talk about her book, but okay. I don't mind.
We will get a chance to talk about her book shortly.
Hopefully my dog will not escape. I don't know how she got out. Okay. Sorry, Michelle, that I'm reading the same exact scene. It's probably your third time you're going to hear it.
No worries.
Okay. So this is actually not in the beginning. It's like chapter 5 or 6. The younger sister, Anna, is going to visit her grandparents. Well, not visit, she's trying to get them because they're going to a party. So it's just a scene between her and her grandparents that I really enjoy. It always makes me laugh. Okay. My grandma finally waddles out in a paisley robe, looking half asleep and smelling like old unwashed clothes. She sits down on the rug-covered couch and immediately asks me when I'm going to get married. I want grandchildren, she says melodramatically. You have grandchildren, I say, pointing to myself. I'm old. I'm going to die soon, my grandma says. You're not going to die soon, I say in English. My babushka has a penchant for languages, knew 5 of them before moving here, and now she's the only one in the family above 50 who can technically understand me, though most of the time she chooses not to. I'm not going to start having babies with random people because you have a headache or whatever. Did I say random people? You should only marry a Russian Jew, babushka continues to lament. This part she emphasizes as if she hasn't been telling me the same thing my entire life. I still can't understand why it's so important to her. They may have a mezuzah next to their door now, but we don't even celebrate Hanukkah. I find the concept of religion very creepy. Who needs more orders, let alone from made-up things who live in the sky? I have enough people telling me what to do, thank you very much. Leave her be, my grandpa says, sitting down on the couch beside her. Did we move to America just to marry Russian Jews, I ask, switching back to Russian, which gets better and better as it approaches a subject that it is so familiar with. Why didn't we stay in Chernovtsi then? My grandpa starts to laugh, but then stops himself when he sees my grandma's face. She continues along in her speech, now on the part where everyone hates the Jews. It's some version of this rant every time I see her. Everyone, they all want us dead. Believe me, I know. For the millionth time. This is America, I sigh. It's all the same everywhere, my grandma continues, shaking her head. Oh, you'll see one day. Just because no one is trying to kill us now doesn't mean they won't again. She stands looking suddenly agitated, but doesn't go to her room. Not that it matters to me. I already have one foot in the grave, but for you, Mila, my grandpa yells, enough. It's okay, Dadushka, I sigh. She's allowed to have her own opinions. It's true, but I have wondered how their opinions could diverge so much on the same issue. Is my grandmother more stubborn, or does she merely have a better memory? My grandpa escaped a concentration camp on his own 2 feet after watching his entire family die. Baba Mila spent most of the war hiding in a farmer's shed. Not that it's so much better to sleep on a pile of hay and wait anxiously to be caught, but you'd think of the 2 of them, my grandpa would be more pessimistic. The only reason for the disparity I've come up with is that maybe some people choose to hold on to their traumas while others throw them out like a worn out coat. Maybe you can decide between it making you weaker or making you stronger. Or maybe the decision gets made without your input at all, and you have to live with that. The most traumatic thing that ever happened to me was moving to America, which is nothing in comparison. I don't even remember it. Just the shadow of a feeling I can never put my finger on. Babushka turns back to me, ignoring her husband of over 50 years. Have you spoken to your uncle lately? I'm supposed to be buried right next to my brother Nikolai, and he's trying to take the spot right from under my nose, my own nephew. That can't possibly be true, Babushka, I say. I stand up and look towards her bedroom door, hoping she will get the hint. When she doesn't, I take off my coat and place it on the chair. It's close to 80 degrees in their apartment, so I might as well not pass out from heat exhaustion. It is true, you don't care. You've forgotten all about us. I didn't forget, I interject. Yes, you did. You've forgotten us old people. You've forgotten Russia, she complains. Good luck to you, Dievichka. It won't work. It's in your soul forever. Doesn't matter where you go. You may be in America now, but you cannot merely cut off your roots and continue to walk. She looks away into nothingness, then starts shaking her head in disbelief. I don't entirely disagree with her on this point, so I stay silent. In Russia, I was so happy. I had my whole life ahead of me. Now I just sit around waiting for death. The way she emphasizes the word death, Smerta, makes me start laughing. I don't know why. It's not like I haven't heard it before. I've heard it all before. I simply never realized how funny it is. I laugh so hard, tears rush from my eyes. Oh, she's laughing at me now, Grandma Mila says, staring straight ahead. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha, ha. I'm funny to her. What a funny shutka, Baba, I say, laughing even harder. I'm a joke now, she asks slowly, looking at my grandpa. No, Babushka, I said you made a joke. It was funny. I'm a joke, she says. That's not what I said. My grandpa claps his hands together. Mila, come on, let's get dressed. Yes, I was happy in Russia, she continues, even with Stalin and the war and all the lines. She sits back down, swaying forward and backward, almost as if the last conversation didn't even happen. Are you really missing Stalin, Babushka? I've heard this all before, but I never fully considered what she was saying. Of course she isn't, my grandpa says gruffly, no longer looking at either of us. We all thought he was a great man, Baba Mila is saying, a hint of pride in her eyes. But you know that he wasn't, right? I ask, incredulous. I may suck at history, but they lived through this. Shouldn't they remember? You wouldn't understand, she says, with a brief disapproving glance at my unwashed hair and ripped jeans. You weren't there. You never had to wait in line for bread. Mila, my grandpa snaps, enough already. You're not happy here, I press on. Sometimes I don't know what she wants from me, except maybe to go back in time and be my age again. I'm sure it doesn't help that they never leave their apartment and have nothing to do now that we don't need them anymore. You'd rather have Stalin, I ask? Phew, I'm not talking about Stalin, Baba Mila grunts, even though she was indeed just talking about him. You're too young, you wouldn't understand. Understand what? When I was your age, I didn't believe the old people either, she says. Who did you know in the USSR that was 80? I'm no history buff, but I know it's very unlikely she knew many people above 60. Most who survived the war still died young from many years of starvation and stress, and in our family, hardly anyone survived the war. Babushka shakes her head. Now I have one foot in the grave. Mila, my grandpa yells. What? We're not newlyweds anymore, skipping down the beach, she says. Dedushka starts to laugh. Ha, you skipping down the beach. That's something I'd like to see. I look at my grandpa. Dedushka, are you not happy here? I ask, suddenly really wanting to know. He waves a hand in my direction, as if to say, how can we be happy sitting around in this small, sticky apartment all day? But this blasé reaction doesn't match what he says, which is, of course we are. Don't listen to your grandma when she's in this kind of mood. Then he chuckles a little. Stolid. Now that's a name you don't hear much anymore. You don't, I search my brain for the right Russian vocabulary. Prefer another city, not here? Where else would we go, he asks, grinning again. Back to Ukraine, I ask, even though this is a dumb question. I know that there's no going back to Ukraine, not the one we left anyway. That place no longer exists. The Soviet Union is gone. For as long as I could remember, home was a street I could never reach other than in my dreams. Back to Ukraine, she says. And what would we do there, Anushka? Now my grandpa is the one who starts laughing. Sell a basket of apples to tourists, live on the street. This is what happens to old people who are alone. They're like the stray dogs running around downtown, except those dogs are better fed. Dedushka shakes his head, the laugh gone from his voice. We had this conversation too many times when you were little. Duh? Every day when I would walk you to school, you would ask, Dedushka, can we go home today? I want to go back to our apartment on Ruska Street. I miss the swings and the cats and our neighbors, Alla and Nella. I said, Dedushka, this is our home now. There's nowhere to go back to. Dedushka sighs and claps his hands on his knees. You were a very sad little girl. Dedushka, you're thinking of Masha, I tell him. I was only a baby when we were on Ruska Street. My grandpa blinks, then turns his head toward the ceiling. Da, pravda. You're right. It was your sister, he said. You've always been more angry than sad, more American. Me? Angry? American? I will tell you what I told her then. There are good things and bad things about living anywhere, my grandpa says. As long as you have your people, why should it matter if you stay in one tiny piece of it over another tiny piece of it? Try telling that to Hitler, my grandma laughs. I don't hear anybody, but I see
Thank
clapping.
you, that was great.
Okay.
We're clapping. We're
Okay.
cheering wildly.
Okay, good.
Thank you guys so much. Those were both really great. All right, well, what I would like to do is I have a couple questions that have been things I'm wondering. And then hopefully the chat is open and I would love to hear questions from other folks as well. One of the questions I wanted to ask, obviously, as you know, your former professor, was there a moment in workshop, a sort of aha moment when things really started working, really started coming together for you guys? Or, and what do you think the value of workshop is for you personally, for aspiring writers more generally? I'd love to hear what you both had to say about that.
I personally don't remember a moment like that. I definitely think workshop is very valuable though, to just, I think you constantly need feedback. And once you're out of school, the feedback usually comes from like agents telling you no, or your editor. So you get way less feedback. So it's kind of nice to get so many different perspectives in the same 5 minutes. But I honestly did not really understand how to write a novel until I wrote like 5 of them and threw them out. And that was all after school. So maybe Jessica will have a different answer.
And so you wrote 5 novels.
No, I'm exaggerating. I wrote like 1 novel, an essay collection, and then like a few versions of this novel, probably 5 or 6 versions before I got to this version.
Before you got to this version.
Yeah, like a lot.
And when you were in class, did you mostly write short stories?
Yeah, I really didn't even try to write a novel in school. It was like so what I really did get good at, I think, in school was essay writing from Michelle's class. I didn't even know essay writing was a thing. And it just really came naturally to me. But then it actually made it harder when I was trying to write a novel afterward, because I was so used to like just writing these short scenes where people talk about their feelings and There was like no plot at all. So I had to kind of like completely relearn how do I write plot for like an entire book, especially a mystery, because it's kind of more complicated than a like more of a literary book, because you have to, you know, leave all the clues and everything. So.
How about you, Jessica? You had that aha moment, right? When you looked in workshop and you said, this is it, I get it now.
Well, I think the closest thing that I had to an aha moment in workshop was actually taking Rebecca Johns Trissler's speculative fiction class, because I think it was the first time, you know, like working in that particular genre for me, where I was like, oh, like this is, you know, like this is kind of the thing that is kind of lighting up my brain more than what I've been writing so far. And I think that was, you know, that was an interesting moment for me, because I started to kind of to examine the content of my own work. And, you know, the feedback that I got in that workshop was in many ways better than the feedback that I'd gotten in other workshops, because I feel like the energy that I was putting into that particular kind of work translated to the quality of the work that I was doing. Now, in terms of workshop in a macro sense, I feel like it's incredibly helpful to sort of give new writers the vocabulary for sort of talking about work, and giving them sort of tests that they can then use for their own work. I feel like throughout all of the workshops that I've done, I've sort of developed, you know, a series of questions that I just ask now in any workshop that I'm participating in, you know, with writer friends, or, you know, in more formal workshop spaces. And then I apply the same to my own work. And it seems like no matter what genre you're working in, you know, no matter if it's a short story or a novel, some of those questions kind of apply across the board and are super useful for, you know, kind of holding up work to, you know, just in a universal way. Like, does it meet these sort of basic criteria? And then if it does, let's look at what else is working. Let's look at what else needs work. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, workshop for me has been a very useful tool. And, you know, there are limitations there as well, but I feel like any tool has those sorts of real benefits and real limitations.
Right.
What are those questions that you ask?
I mean, off the top of it, like I actually keep a list.
I'm curious.
Yeah, just like, what does the protagonist want? Like what, you know, what are the stakes? You know, what goes wrong if the character doesn't get what they want? You know, like what are the sources of tension? Is there a clock? You know, like, you know, something sort of driving the feeling of tension within a story. It's just, yeah, I've got a ton of them, and I feel like when I taught, I would, you know, sort of use those to base my rubric for grading off of, and sort of trying to impart those to my students as well, because it felt like just kind of a shortcut to give, you know, to lend a vocabulary to students to be like, okay, are these things happening? Yes or no? And if they are not, should they be? And if they are, is it working? Is it not working? So yeah, it's just kind of a shorthand I've developed.
Where do you teach?
Oh, I just taught during my MFA program.
Oh, okay.
And I'll teach a, you know, a standalone workshop here and there.
All right. Both of you seem to have a foot in the literary camp and a foot in the sort of genre camp, and I don't mean that in any way insultingly. Hope you don't take it as such. Do you think in these terms? Do you find these terms useful or a hindrance? Do you think that certain genre guideposts can be a boon that literary writers are silly to resist?
I actually kind of like that. I was not intending to write a mystery at all. I was just always working in the literary literature world, and it was kind of just fun for me to learn that there's all these like different websites and magazines that are just totally devoted to crime stories, and magazines for it, and crime books. And like I joined Twitter recently, and it's just like all these crime authors are my only friends, and it's just this whole scene I didn't even know about. And so that's been kind of fun. But my next book is YA supernatural, so it's going to be in like a totally different sphere. So I just honestly don't really think about it that much.
So you don't think about it?
No, just whatever I feel like working on. or whatever it turns into is fine with me.
Okay. Jessica, how about you?
I feel like I think about it a lot, and maybe that's only because I hang out with a lot of writers who are sort of writing mainstream literary fiction, and so we get into these well, I mean, we get into these conversations a lot about like what defines genre and whether or not these sort of boundaries that we're creating are even useful. And of course, I'm in the camp of like, they're not useful, they are often counterproductive. But it was interesting to sort of go, like you said, we had a foot in both camps. I feel like I went completely over the wall with this book.
What do you mean when you say that you went completely over the wall?
Like, I mean, I was like, I'm gonna write a thriller. There was a part of me that was just, I had been writing speculative fiction in my MFA program. I had been working on some sort of like literary, magical realism-ish books afterwards, and was really had it in my head of like, that's as far as I'm gonna go, that like that's about as out there as I'm gonna be, and was kind of spinning my wheels for a while. And so I want to say now 2 summers ago, I just was, I was getting very frustrated and sort of very stymied, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write a thriller. Like, I'm just gonna see if I can actually work in this genre, and write the kind of book that I go to read for fun, and I was examining my own tastes, and I read very diversely, and so I feel like, why wouldn't I write diversely in that same way? So I feel like I decided, okay, I'm going to try and figure out what makes a good thriller. And I read a bunch of thrillers, and I wanted to see, okay, like what are the structures of this kind of novel. And honestly, I think it taught me a lot about writing literary fiction too, which is why I think that's
what I found too when I was reading a lot of mysteries. I was like, oh, this is actually really hard.
It's very hard. And
with my other writing.
Yeah, and it teaches you to really consider the reader as you're writing, which is something that I feel like I had never really been, fully doing before. As you're writing, especially, for workshops and stuff, it's really about kind of your intention for the work and your ideas about what you want to say. And those are, interrogating like all of these things about you and like you as the author and what story you want to tell. And for the first time while I was writing this thriller, all I was thinking about was, okay, how am I going to keep a person turning the page? Like, how am I going to keep a reader engaged? And
important with these.
It's sort of a game changer, because all of a sudden you learn to consider
so much because of that. Because I'd be like, the scene is not having any clues. I have to cut it.
Yeah, and it
kind of feels more clean at the end. Almost.
Yeah, it does, and it's you really sort of learn, because you're working within this distinct structure, and because there are sort of rules and conventions, you learn to sort of throw out your ideas about like, it's about you and what you want to say. It's like, no, it's about really giving someone a book that they want to keep reading, and that's that ended up being sort of the aim of it. So I feel like when I turn back to these sort of ongoing projects that I've been working on for so long, it's given me sort of a new lens to look at them through as I'm working. So
well, that's a great answer. Those are great.
I was just going to add that I had the opposite experience, where I did not go into it wanting to write a thriller. Went into it writing a literary book, but my publisher is a crime publisher, and my editor kept telling me, I love this book, but we need more crime. We're a crime publisher, more crime. And I was getting really stuck writing the crime stuff because it like stresses me out when I read it, and I usually skim like all the stressful parts of books. So I really had to force myself to like sit through my stress for these characters and just write it. But I was like,
that's fascinating.
Half a year, I was just like, I don't want to. I would just kind of hint at what was going on with the crime, but I just like didn't want to write it.
So your book sold before it was finished in a way, then?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'd been talking to her about it for like a year in advance, and we just kept working on it. And then they didn't accept it until my last revision, which is this version of the book, basically. So it's kind of backwards.
Was it at all frustrating for you, feeling like, you were writing, towards or away from your original?
No, actually it was awesome because the book I had just wasn't really working that well, and I just couldn't figure out why, and my editor was just really good at like steering me in a direction, and I love how it turned out. And I read sometimes I skim the old versions. I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't publish that, because I had a different publisher originally. It was like a completely different book, and then they dropped it, and I'm just really glad that version didn't come out. It turned out well.
What an interesting process. I mean, it's kind of, it sounds like a pretty unusual process took you to publication, no?
Yeah, because we had talked for like a year and a half. She just kept reading my book, like without buying it for a while. But she just really liked the writing, and like she saw something in the themes and everything, and she just had, I guess, some confidence that I could figure it out. So I just like kept reworking it until we could get it to a place where we both liked it.
And she was an editor at where?
At Hollis Books, where my publisher is.
And did you get her through an agent, or was she just?
No, at that point my agent dropped me when I was in the hospital after I gave birth. It was like the worst timing. So I had to go and like find a publisher by myself after that. And they happened to be one. They happen to be one that will take, I mean, most people have agents who get them as a publisher, but they also will read stuff from unagented people. So luckily I just kind of like swept in.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. Michelle, Professor Morano asked in the questions, how did your book end up with a crime publisher without crime in it?
Well, that's the funny part, because I don't even know how I found her as an editor. Maybe I thought there was enough crime in it. There was, I guess, because the Masha storyline started from somebody asking me to write a short story for the Milwaukee Noir short story collection. And so I felt like it had enough crime already, even though she didn't really do that much in the short story. So yeah, it was really just a process of working with my editor and her just being like, more crime, more, like every draft, like, no, more crime. Because I kept just like I had this like mind block about actually writing scenes with criminal activity. And it just took me forever to be like, okay, I just need to write it. I just didn't think I could do it, was the issue. But then I did, and I felt so much better afterward. And then I still skim that part because it stresses me out.
It's like conflict, right? I feel like so many people go out of their way to avoid conflict.
It's just like, I get stressed for the characters because I feel like I'm there or something.
Yeah, genuine care.
Because a lot of it's autobiographical, so I feel like I'm putting myself in this like really sketchy situation, and so I get really stressed out for them.
So I'd love questions from other people, but that was going to be a question if I didn't get a question from other people. You know, early books in writers' careers are often largely autobiographical, and I wondered to what extent yours was, and just because this is your second book, and I know a little bit about you, but I don't know that I see the autobiography immediately in that. But I guess I wanted to pose that question to both of you. What's that, Jessica?
Not so much autobiographical. In fact, I think I really wanted to write a character who was much, much, much more interesting than I am. So that's basically where we ended up.
I kind of did that too, but so the younger sister, Anna, started off as like a 19-year-old version of me when I was writing still an essay collection with these kind of themes in mind. So I would say Anna is very autobiographical, but I made her way more likable than I was at 19. So, and then I feel like there's a little part of me in a few characters. And then a lot of the family members are just straight up based off people that are related to me. But hopefully I use that all up. And then, so my next book has like nothing autobiographical at all. I had been wanting to write about these themes about Russian immigration and like the different generational issues that come up when you move to a new country. And I wanted to use my own family because like the grandparent scene is just basically an exactly scene I've had with my grandparents. And I just thought it was really funny. So I wanted to like kind of keep keep those elements more close to reality, because I just don't think I could have made up a better version.
And have your grandparents read it?
They're dead, so no, unfortunately. But my dad, there's a character based off him too, and he read it. And I didn't even know he finished it until like 2 days ago, because he like won't talk to me about it. And he just basically said he could not separate the fiction from the reality, so he can't give me an opinion on it.
How you feel about that?
I don't know. It's fine. I thought he'd be mad, so that's better.
Well, yeah. So he's not mad.
He's not mad. He's just like, oh, I just couldn't stop thinking if that was you or not, and if you actually did those things. And I'm like, I told you a million times about the crime stuff. I had to make it up. I didn't do those things, and he just couldn't believe me. So
well, he must be proud of you, no?
I think maybe, I don't know. He's not like a literary person. He doesn't really read. He probably is just happy I finally published a book, because I've been talking about it for like 30 years. So, well, not 30, but for a long time. So yeah, he's happy, but he just, because it's based off our family, I think it must be uncomfortable to read about a little bit. A lot of the characters are no longer with us, so I don't have to deal with any fallback or anything. Basically just him.
What was there anybody you were afraid of reading it?
Just him. I thought he'd be really mad.
Okay.
So as long as he's not mad, whatever. And
Jessica, pure powers of invention on your part?
I mean, I feel like it's tough to get into a character's head without, like letting sort of like that porous border work a little bit. There are definitely elements of the character that are close to me or how I think, but I mean, it was easy to sort of, I feel like my first book was much more about my headspace than this one is, because this is a character who has been through a lot of trauma and who is sort of carrying around, just all of this baggage when it comes to her family and her missing sister, and she's divorced, and she's, so she's going through a lot, and a lot of things that I have never experienced, and I, luckily don't have as problems in my life. But what was interesting about it was that as I was writing it, I was realizing that the headspace that I was sort of in at the time, which was kind of a difficult place of like, I felt like the writing that I was doing wasn't really going anywhere, and I was, in a job that I wasn't particularly happy with, and it was just in this kind of difficult moment that, where I was reevaluating a lot of things. It was interesting and liberating to sort of bring that to a character who has huge problems and see the ways in which the issues that I was having were sort of mirroring the ways in which she was kind of dealing with her trauma badly. So that I feel like it's impossible to take on a character and not bring some of yourself and your own headspace to it. And I think for me, it was just fun, and it was freeing to write a character who was so liberated from, I guess, the rules of good behavior, because she had been through so much. I feel like that's always a fun place for me to be working in.
Right. Yeah, it's fun to be able to give ourselves our permission a little bit, right?
Definitely, yeah. And I feel like the danger, though, and as Zhanna was talking about it, I'm like, oh, right. Like, the problem is that people think that everything is autobiographical, even if it's not. Right. Like, that's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, everybody thinks I'm Masha, who's the older sister in this book, and I'm like really not.
Yeah.
And people who know me think that. I'm like, are you actually an Orthodox Jew? And I'm like, no. I'm not religious at all. That's just a character.
Well, and it's tricky when you're writing characters who behave pretty badly. It's like, you just want to be like, no, disclaimer, like not necessarily who I am at all. Yeah.
Rebecca Professor John Stritzler asked, what are you both working on next?
So I just finished, I've been working on this YA book at the same time. So the last like 6-7 years. Hopefully this is the draft that's finished. You never know until somebody says it is, basically. But it's a supernatural YA novel about these Ukrainian orphans who are being raised by their uncle in Buffalo. And the main character, Lena, engraves portraits into tombstones, which is based on a job that I had. and they start talking to her. And one guy basically hints that her father is actually alive, which she thought her whole family was dead. So kind of sends her on this quest to figure out what happened to her family. So that one's finished. And then I started a new project. It's a modern Sleeping Beauty, but it's set in 2046. And Princess Aurora is actually like the heir to a big tech. Her dad's like a big tech billionaire guy, and he had her be raised in the middle of the woods on this like off the grid commune. Instead of like the three fairies, it's like this lesbian couple and their daughter, and they kind of teach there. And it's like a little bit in the future, but not too much. It's been fun to work on, but it's a lot harder because you have to think about like the entire world before you write anything.
Well, that sounds awesome. Both of those
Yeah.
sound incredible.
Sounds really interesting. And how about you, Jessica?
I'm, I always have I feel like a couple of things that I'm working on simultaneously, because I'm still working on my MFA thesis, which I feel like is going to turn into a 10-year project. It's a speculative novel about a couple of generations of women in Chicago who can see imminent death by touching people. And so it's like partially historical and also speculative, and it's 400 pages and it's not done. So that one is sort of the ongoing never-ending project. And then I'm actually just developing a new thriller that I think I'm going to write about this woman who goes and meets a Greek shipping tycoon in 1970s Rome, and it sort of spins off from there. So
cool. We have a question from Anna Gerwig, and maybe we'll make this our last.
Anna did a great interview with me about my book.
Oh, thank you. It was so fun for me as well.
I really enjoyed it, and it turned out really well, I thought. Anyway,
Anna, do you want to ask your question? And
Sure.
I think maybe we'll make this the last question. So if you guys want to. Okay.
Yeah, I would turn on my video, but I'm taking my dog on a walk right now. But it's been fun to listen in. So for each of you all, how does your writing process kind of evolve with each project, that you all were just talking about, depending on the genre or the fact that you've now written and published a novel, etc.?
Well, I can say that this new project involves a lot of like breaks and a lot of note taking, and just like a lot when I'm walking around, I'll be thinking about ideas for it, which is very different than this first book, which just kind of like came out of me because it's all these ideas I've been thinking about since I moved here from Ukraine. So just a lot of note taking, a lot of breaks, and then I go back into it. And it's like very spotty. Like I'll do a bunch and then I won't look at it for like 20 days. I have a toddler, so it kind of impacts writing time. So a little different. I wrote most of this book before I had a baby.
Yeah, I feel like every book is sort of different, and that was a hard lesson to learn. You sort of feel like when you've written a book that you've figured it out, you've cracked the code onto how to do this thing, which is novel writing, and you can just do it again and again. And that is absolutely not true. And I feel like every book, you have to learn how to write each book you write. And so I think the big lesson that I've sort of taken away from particularly my experience with writing The Lost Girls is go where the energy is. If you feel like you're kind of in the middle of something and getting very stuck and feeling like it's not working, if you have if you have a new idea for a book, go with it, and if you're having fun, the reader will be having fun. So that's kind of the big lesson that I took away from this time around. It might not work the same way the next time around, but I know enough now to know that.
Oh, I love that. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that seems like a pretty good place to end too. If you're having fun, the reader will be having fun. Thank you guys so much. Really a pleasure to, see you, have you, talk to you all.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for moderating.
Yeah, thanks to Mark for setting this up as part of the Visiting Writers Program. And
you haven't aged a day, it looks like.
None of us have.
You look
That's strange to say to somebody who just had his hip replaced.
I think I haven't seen you in like 10 years.
Not feeling quite as spry at the moment.
Well, I can see your hips, so I don't know.
Yeah.
From the face.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to see you all, and keep in touch. And yeah, we look forward to more.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. That was so fun. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye.